The year is 1943. High in the stratosphere above occupied Europe, the world is a stark canvas of blue and white. For a pilot of the German Luftwaffe, this is his kingdom. From the cockpit of his Focke-Wulf 190, Oberleutnant Otto Kaiser scans the heavens, his eyes attuned to the deadly geometry of aerial combat. His machine is a masterpiece of engineering, light, lethally armed with cannons, and agile as a falcon. He and his comrades are the undisputed masters of this domain, the chivalric knights of the Third Reich, and they fly with the chilling confidence of victors. For months, they have been feasting on the clumsy, vulnerable formations of American B-17 bombers, swatting away their escorts, British Spitfires that struggle in the thin air above 25,000 feet, and American P-38 Lightnings plagued by engine troubles in the cold. But today, something new has appeared on the horizon. It is not sleek, it is not graceful, it is enormous. Through his canopy, Kaiser sees a formation of new American fighters. They are shaped like barrels with wings, stubby, heavy, almost comically large. His lips curl into a smirk. He keys his microphone, his voice dripping with amusement, broadcasting to the rest of his squadron. Look what the Americans have sent us now, flying milk bottles. A ripple of laughter crackles back through his headset. The new plane is the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. To the German aces, it is an airborne insult, a joke. They nickname it Der Juggernaut, the Jug, not out of respect for its power, but as a mockery of its immense size and weight. At nearly 8 tons fully loaded, it is the heaviest single-engine fighter of the war. They know, with the certainty of seasoned killers, that in a turning dogfight this lumbering beast will be helpless. An easy kill. A fat, new score to paint on the tail of his Focke-Wulf. Kaiser banks his fighter, the sunlight glinting off his wings. He is ready to teach the American newcomer a lesson. He is ready to dance. He does not know it yet, but he is not about to engage in a duel. He is about to fly into a sledgehammer. The laughter of the Luftwaffe is about to die, choked off by a storm of fire and a terrifying lesson in the brutal physics of violence. To understand the Thunderbolt, you must first understand the problem it was built to solve. By late 1942, the American strategic bombing campaign against Germany was in peril. The B-17 Flying Fortress was a marvel of defensive armament, but it was not invincible. Without fighter escorts that could protect it all the way to targets deep within the Reich, the bomber formations were being systematically torn apart by the Luftwaffe. A solution was needed, and it was needed desperately. The requirement was for a high-altitude escort fighter, a plane that could not just reach the bombers, but fight effectively in the thin, freezing air 6 miles above the Earth. The challenge was immense. At that altitude, an engine's power is starved for oxygen. A pilot's mind and body are pushed to the absolute limit. The answer came not from an attempt to build a lighter, more nimble aircraft, but from the mind of a Georgian-born designer named Alexander Kartveli. His philosophy was radical. Instead of starting with an airframe, he started with the most powerful engine imaginable, the Pratt & Whitney R 2000 800 Double Wasp. It was an 18-cylinder, air-cooled radial engine, a 2,000-horsepower behemoth that powered naval fighters and medium bombers. Then, Kartveli built the biggest, strongest, and most resilient single-seat airplane he could design around it. But the engine alone wasn't enough. To maintain its power at high altitude, it needed a turbo supercharger. This complex device, essentially a high-speed air pump driven by the engine's own exhaust, was a plumbing nightmare. It required a labyrinth of ducts and pipes that ran from the engine, along the belly of the plane, to a turbine behind the cockpit, and then all the way back to the engine's carburetor. It was this massive, intricate system that gave the P-47 its signature deep, barrel-chested fuselage. When the first production models rolled out, the reaction was one of disbelief. American and British test pilots were appalled. It weighed twice as much as a Spitfire. Its initial rate of climb was atrocious. Its acceleration was sluggish. Its turning radius was measured in acres. The legendary British test pilot Captain Eric Brown flew it and noted that if you were caught in a dogfight, your only hope was to go into a dive. Famous American ace Don Blakesley Upon seeing it for the first time, reportedly said, "It ought to be a good ground. Strafing airplane. It looks like it'll dig a furrow." The sentiment was clear. This was not a thoroughbred fighter. It was a monster. But Kartveli had built more than just a big airplane. He had built a survivor. The air-cooled radial engine had no vulnerable liquid cooling system to puncture. The sheer mass of the engine block acted as a natural piece of armor for the pilot. The airframe was over-engineered, built to withstand incredible stress. And it carried a weapon system that would redefine the concept of aerial firepower. Not 2, not 4, but 8 Browning M2. 50 caliber machine guns, 4 nestled in the leading edge of each wing. In early 1943, the pilots of the U.S. 8th Air Force's 56th Fighter Group, led by the brilliant tactician Colonel Hubert "Hub" Zemke, arrived in England with their brand-new Thunderbolts. They were met with skepticism by their RAF counterparts and quiet confidence from the Luftwaffe. Zemke knew his pilots couldn't win a traditional dogfight against the nimble German fighters. He had to write a new rulebook. He instructed his men, "Do not engage the Focke-Wulfs in a turning fight. They will beat you every time. Your advantage is at high altitude. Your advantage is the dive, and your advantage is your firepower. Use it." The stage was set. The first encounters were tentative. The American pilots were learning their new, unwieldy mounts. The Germans were probing, testing the limits of this new curiosity. And then, the true nature of the Thunderbolt was revealed. A Luftwaffe pilot, confident in his FW-190's superior performance, would latch onto the tail of a P-47. He would open fire, and he would watch in disbelief as his 20mm cannon shells hammered into the American plane's fuselage, only for the Jug to shrug off the damage and keep flying. Frustrated, the German would press his attack, and then the P-47 pilot would do exactly what he had been trained to do. He would push the stick forward. The Thunderbolt, with its 8 tons of mass, would respond not like an airplane but like a falling locomotive. It would accelerate in a dive with a ferocity that no other fighter on Earth could match. A pursuing FW-190 or Bf-109 would see the P-47 simply pull away, dropping at speeds exceeding 500, sometimes even 550 miles per hour, speeds that would cause structural failure, literally ripping the wings off the lighter German airframes if they tried to follow. The hunter had instantly, terrifyingly, become the hunted, and as the German pilot broke off his dive, the American would execute a climbing turn, converting that incredible speed back into altitude, ready to strike again. This was the birth of boom and zoom. This was energy fighting, perfected. The P-47 pilots were not dogfighting. They were jousting, and they were riding an armoured warhorse that hit like a battering ram. But the dive was only half of the equation. The other half was the terrible moment of truth when the P-47 got a German fighter in its sights. An American pilot had a gun sight the size of a dinner plate. He would place the enemy aircraft within it and press the trigger. The result was an eruption of violence that had no equal in the skies. 8 50 caliber machine guns fire at a combined rate of over 100 rounds per second. In a single 3-second burst, a P-47 could spew more than 200 projectiles, a concentrated stream of armor-piercing, incendiary, and tracer rounds. This wasn't a weapon of precision, it was a weapon of saturation. It didn't just hit an enemy plane, it engulfed it. The sheer kinetic energy of the impacts would shred control surfaces, pulverize canopies, and saw through wing spars. A Focke-Wulf caught in that stream of lead didn't just get shot down, it disintegrated. Luftwaffe ace Günther Rohl, one of history's most successful pilots, described his first encounter with a Thunderbolt's guns. "I was flying my 109, and I saw this big American fighter. I thought, easy target. I came in behind him. Suddenly he broke, and I overshot him. For a moment, he was in front of me, and he fired. It was like a flying wall of fire. I have never seen anything like it. I was hit everywhere. The airplane was shaking apart. I was lucky to bail out. His experience was not unique. German pilots learned, to their horror, that a head-on pass with a P-47 was an act of suicide. The Thunderbolt could absorb the hits from their cannons and reply with a barrage so dense it was impossible to fly through unscathed. The psychological impact was immense. The arrogant confidence of the Luftwaffe pilots began to crack. The sky was no longer their private hunting ground. The jug was here. The pilots of the 56th Fighter Group, Zemke's Wolfpack, and other P-47 groups became masters of their craft. Men like Robert S. Johnson, who survived being shot up on his first mission to become a 27-kill ace, or Francis Gabby Gabreski, the top American ace in Europe. They understood the plane's soul. They flew it not by the book, but by feel. They knew that in the Thunderbolt, they were flying the toughest aircraft in the sky. The stories of its resilience became legend. P-47 seconds would return to base with entire engine cylinders shot away. They came back with tail surfaces shredded, with gaping holes in their wings, with their canopies shattered. One pilot, fighting for control of his crippled plane, realized his landing gear wouldn't come down. Running low on fuel, he flew to the English Channel and deliberately ditched the 8-ton fighter. It hit the water, skipped like a stone, and settled, floating long enough for him to climb out and await rescue. The plane was so tough, it could even survive crashing into the sea. For the American pilots, this durability bred a unique form of courage. They knew their jug would almost always get them home. By late 1943 and into the crucial spring of 1944, the Thunderbolt had broken the back of the Luftwaffe's fighter defense. Long before the more famous P-51 Mustang arrived in theater in large numbers, it was the P-47 that was clearing the skies over Germany. It escorted the bomber fleets to Berlin and back, systematically attriting the German fighter force, shooting down experienced pilots that the Reich could never replace. The laughter had long since vanished. It was replaced by a grim, fearful respect. Then, as the P-51, with its superior range, began to take over the primary long-range escort role, the P-47 was not retired. It was reborn. Its true calling, the mission it seemed to have been destined for, was about to begin. If it was a monster in the air, on the ground, it was an apocalypse. Stripped of its high-altitude escort duties, the Thunderbolt was unleashed as a fighter bomber, a thunder bomber. Its massive airframe and powerful engine could carry a staggering payload. It could haul 2 1,000-pound bombs, a loadout equal to that of a light bomber from just a few years earlier. It could carry 10 5-inch high-velocity rockets under its wings, and it still had its 8 50-caliber machine guns. In the run-up to D-Day and in the brutal fighting across France that followed, the P-47 became the bane of the German army. They flew at treetop level, hunting. A German panzer division, moving along a road, would hear the terrifying growl of the double Wasp engine. Then the Thunderbolts would appear. Diving out of the Sunday, rockets would streak into the sides of tanks, bombs would obliterate supply trucks, and the 8 machine guns would scythe through infantry and anti-aircraft positions. The pilots called it loco-busting. A favorite target was the German railway system. A P-47 would approach a speeding train, fly parallel to it, and rake the engine with its 50 seconds. The high-pressure boiler would explode in a catastrophic cloud of steam and shrapnel. In a single afternoon, a squadron of P-47 seconds could paralyze an entire sector's logistics. During the Battle of the Bulge, when Hitler threw his last reserves into a desperate winter offensive, the Allied ground forces were reeling. For days, thick fog and snow kept the air forces grounded, but when the weather finally broke, the sky filled with thunderbolts. They fell upon the exposed German armoured columns with a vengeance, creating a target-rich environment that became a slaughter. The P-47 seconds were credited with destroying hundreds of tanks, armoured vehicles, and trucks, halting the German advance and turning the tide of the battle. The plane that was once mocked for being too heavy, too earthbound, had become the ultimate ground attack weapon, its ruggedness allowing it to absorb intense ground fire and still complete its mission. From the skies over the Reich to the hedgerows of Normandy and the forests of the Ardennes, the P-47 Thunderbolt carved its legacy. Over 15,600 were built. Its pilots destroyed over 7,000 enemy aircraft in the air and on the ground, and countless thousands of tanks, trains, and trucks. It was a sledgehammer, a workhorse, a survivor. It was not the most beautiful fighter of the war, nor the most agile, but it may have been the most important. It arrived when it was needed most, a blunt instrument of industrial power that bludgeoned the Luftwaffe's elite into submission and then turned its fury upon the German war machine on the ground. The German pilots, who had laughed at the flying milk bottle, learned a hard truth. In war, elegance is a luxury, agility is an advantage. But sometimes, victory belongs to the one who can hit the hardest, absorb the most punishment, and simply refuse to die. Victory belongs to the juggernaut,